It's been a while, hasn't it, from the MKM Stadium car park. And I think the majority of the 6,000 fans that were here tonight will have gone home really, really happy. Hull City have come from behind to beat Sunderland by 2-1 to make it 5 wins out of 6 in pre-season. And it just felt like a really enjoyable night. And let's be honest, again, I'm conscious to use the term it's only pre-season because it is just pre-season. And, you never know what impact pre-season has on the season until the season's underway. But given what we've had to watch in the last 12 months, all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, everything that's happened this summer, how refreshing it was just to watch a Hull City team play really well and win a game of football at home. I mean, let's be honest, let's just enjoy that. Forget everything else for a minute. It was just really refreshing to see a vibrant performance, a team that know what they're doing, that are clearly at ease with what they're being asked to do by the manager. And yes, they had the setback of Simon Adingra scoring after 11 minutes to put Sunderland in front, but it took them, 5 minutes, I think it was, for Nathan Tinsdale to equalise. And then they obviously scored in the second half through Abu Kamara to win 2-1. And there were so many other moments of real positivity, and we'll come to some of them in just a minute. But yeah, look, I think it's hard to come away from tonight and not feel excited, to feel enthused about what Sergei Yakirovich has been able to do over the last 4 or 5 weeks in pre-season. There's still, of course, one game to go on Saturday against Getafe, who are a very, very good Spanish La Liga side. So it'll be an altogether different challenge to what we've seen so far. And yes, you'll say that Sunderland are a team in transition themselves. They're getting ready for a Premier League season. They're a week behind City in terms of their preparation because, of course, the Premier League season doesn't start until the following week after the Championship. But look, they weren't great at Stockport in the first half. They improved massively in the second half. This was the most complete 90-minute performance of pre-season, which is naturally where you'd want to be. You'd want to be getting better and better, and things starting to starting to get better and better, as I say, the closer you get to the season. And that is the case. But there's only been a couple of days since, in terms of trading days, since Stockport at the weekend. And they just look really at ease with what they're being asked to do. There's no nonsense. There's no silliness in terms of what the manager's asking them to do. There's no histrionics on the touchline and, bizarre behaviour and this, that and the other. It's just normal, which is kind of like a bit ironic given what's going on away from the actual football pitch at Hull City. But look, really, really good performance. Lots of good individual displays. You've touched on it already there, Alex, in terms of Ryan Giles. I don't know if you've seen, shameless plug here coming up for the interview that we did with Gilo at Edgeley Park that went up on the web and was in the paper earlier today. But he is a player reborn, and he has. The other thing about Ryan Giles as well to remember is he's a bit behind everybody else because he came into pre-season with an ankle problem, and his first pre-season session was the very first session out in Turkey. But again tonight he was bombing up and down that left-hand side. He created a brilliant chance just before Sunderland scored the goal. He created almost a carbon copy of the chance at Stockport where he bombed down the left-hand side. Lovely cross to the back post to pick out Kamara unmarked. And this time Kamara guided it with his left foot around Simon Moore's right-hand post. He should have scored, Kamara, or at least hit the target. But Gilo was, and on the other side, Cody Drame. They've now got 2 fullbacks, and when kind of those fullbacks go forward, Matt Crooks was playing kind of in the number 6 deeper role tonight. Not sure there's longevity in that for Matt Crooks, but we'll have to wait and see, because I still feel they need, ironic really, but because they had one in Mika Seri, but I still feel they need Mika Seri character just to sit in the 6 and kind of take the ball off the back 4 and shift it to the players that are capable of creating something. But look, Crooksy did well tonight as well. And so when those 2 bomb forward, at times Crooks will drop a little bit deeper just to provide that protection. I thought Charlie Hughes and Shemi Ajayi in the centre of the back 4 were very good. And Yeah, there was just lots of really good performances. I thought Carl Joseph worked hard, obviously correct. I thought he'd blown the second goal, actually. He was running and running and running towards the box. Kamara was acres of space, nobody near him. And he left it, and you're thinking, the chance is gone now, but he managed to fudge it to him, and Abu, to his credit, stuck it in the bottom corner. And I thought Abu, for the most part, looked a lot better tonight. I think he's been really poor in pre-season. There was a couple of times at Stockport, also against Cassim Paso, Charlie Hughes would swing the ball out to him with one of his trademark fizzers, and the ball was coming to Kamara, and he sort of watched it go past him and out of play. Really frustrating. And he did again at Stockport on Saturday. But I thought that miss aside in the first half, I thought that Abu was better tonight. Funny though, maybe Joel and Darla coming in, and we'll talk about him in just a minute. It changes things. You know, you've got Ndala coming in. There's David Akintola looks like he's going to be coming in as well on a free transfer. You've got Miller Balumi not far off. Suddenly, Kamara's had no pressure on his plays at all. Now there is, and that changes a player's mentality. Not sometimes subconsciously when there's your place is there. You've got no competition. I'd say you go through the motions, but human nature sometimes you can ease off and. But he's now got players around him that are coming in and will want his place. So, yeah, great for Nathan Tinsdale. I think he's been a real beneficiary of pre-season. Really good finish. And that came from, we talked about Crooks dropping deeper, but that came from Crooks pressing pretty much on the edge of the Sunderland 18-yard box on the corner, forcing the defender to play a really awkward ball back to his goalkeeper, which he made a complete hash of. And Tinsdale, a lovely first-time volley into the net. So, yeah, look, again, you have to put it in context. It is Robert is running his pressing, and we said this last season about Carl Joseph. Yes, he didn't. Luke, I'll come to that transfers in just a minute. Yeah, KJ, he didn't score last season. Obviously, when he came in from Blackpool for a lot of money. But I don't know if you saw, we spoke to him out in Turkey. He sort of explained that he'd had a nasty ankle injury that he'd been playing with. It was picked up on the medical, but City decided to go with it anyway. And he was playing with that ankle injury, and he was played left, he was played right. He came into a team bereft of anything, and he didn't score, and he's got himself off and running in pre-season. But what you would say about Carl Joseph last season, he always worked hard, he always pressed hard. You think of that. I think of the win at Sunderland when he pressed. I think it was Luke 09. He pressed him to give away a corner from which Joe Gowhart scored the winning goal. So he does a lot of work that maybe goes unnoticed. But I thought he worked really hard tonight, got himself an assist. So I just thought it was a really nice, look, genuinely friendlies are dross, aren't they? Friendlies are, you pay money, you pay 15, 20 quid. And you come in and they're glorified training exercises. Nobody wants to get injured. It's just, it's dire. And there are, I think back to there was one out in Turkey a couple of years ago under Liam against Curacao in Antalya. Oh my God, it was like, well, I can't even describe what it was like. But tonight was a really enjoyable game. So yeah, fair play to City. I enjoyed. It was a good game to watch. They've won the game again, 5 wins on the spin, and now just one to go before the real stuff starts. So that's Getafe on Saturday, 4 o'clock kickoff. FYI. A couple of talking points out of tonight was, of course, Joel and Darla, 19-year-olds from Manchester City, left-footed winger, played all various levels for England. Went out on loan to PSV last summer. They had, I think, an option to buy him for £5 or £6 million. Didn't work. He came back to Manchester City in January. He was then loaned out to Forest in end of January, beginning of February, before the window closed. And I remember, obviously, speaking as a Forest fan, there was a lot of excitement around the City ground when he arrived in January. He went into the academy. The move didn't really work. Forest had the option to buy him for £5 million. I think that didn't happen. So he's back at Man City, and he was lively, wasn't he? His first touch was Casey Palmer broke the lines and he played him in and he turned his man and he played it back and that got cleared. And the second one he was through and he hit the post. He looked a real live wire. I think he's going to be one of those players that will excite you 1 minute and frustrate you the next. A bit like we saw with Jadon Philogene. But, City potentially have got a player there that is a heck of a talent. You don't get signed by, you don't get to the level he's at with Man City and being signed by some big clubs and playing for England at various levels if you've got nothing about you. So he will be inconsistent and he will be frustrating. But if they can get him ticking, if they can get him playing, then potentially that's a masterstroke of a signing. And of course, they won't have paid a fee for him, so Man City are probably doing him a favour. And Man City are probably looking at it going, look, he's gone to PSV, it's not worked. He's gone to Forest, it's not worked. Let's get him out. Let's get him playing in the Championship, under a good manager who plays attacking football. And let's see what he does. So, that's a real, Lee was, yeah. So and it's another option, let's be honest. And for pretty much since Miller and Bellumi got injured in October, it's been Abu Kamara and kind of, you're fudging it, aren't you? You're playing Lincoln, you're playing Carl Joseph, you're playing Joe Galhart. You're not playing a natural winger outside. And that was the problem last season. Everything was down through Kamara, and if they blocked Kamara, there was nothing else. So now at least they could start at Coventry with Kamara on one side and Dala on the other. They've got two natural wingers, two threats. So look, I think that's a really good signing. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's been a quiet summer. Just having my feet up with my trotters up in at home doing nothing. Yeah. Hope you're well, mate. Yeah. And then obviously Brandon Williams. There's been a bit of talk about him for quite a while at City. I think this one's been in the offing. Luke, I'll come on to those in just a minute. Brandon Williams, there's been a bit of talk about him for a while. I think he's a player they've kind of been eyeing up for a period of time. Look, let's call a spade a spade. He's had a terrible couple of years as Brandon Williams. He burst on the scene as a youngster at Manchester United. It felt like he had the world at his feet. Off-field issues. Obviously, we know he was. He's had the court case hanging over him, and he's had the suspended jail sentence. So he's got to get his life back on track. And I spoke to Sergei about it after the game. And like I say, it's hard for a reporter because you kind of try and be impartial all the time. And you love the club. You want the club to do well. You want the club to be successful. But you try to be impartial with the managers. But there's something about Sergei that I can't help but admire. And I really like him. And, he said to me then that, he believes in giving people second chances. And that's what he's given to Brandon. He's not going to rush him. He's got time. He's not played for 2 years. He's got to get fit. But he wants him. They're going to work with him. They're going to try and look. Let's not sugarcoat it. Brandon Williams. If you can get Brandon Williams back to the form that he showed when he burst on the scene at Old Trafford, he's one hell of a player, one hell of a talent. He's only 24. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. It's whether he can. His head is in the right space. And obviously, as I say, he's got a suspended jail term hanging over his head for the next couple of years. That's serious, and he's been banned from driving so for a long time. So there's a lot of external factors involving Brandon Williams. But if he's at it, if he can get his head screwed on, and City can look after him and work with him and get him into a better place, and it's not a bad place to be. Particularly, you can assuming that Gilo is on it, and they can get the best out of Gilo. I love Gilo. I love him. I think there's such a talent there, and he's such a nice guy, and such a character is Ryan Giles. He can afford to take his time to get fit and get back and get confidence in himself again. And look, Sergei wants to give him a chance, and everybody will have an opinion on it. Everybody will have an opinion on whether City should be looking at Brandon, and whether he's a player that they given what's gone on before, whether they should be dabbling in. But ultimately, they want to give him a chance. So, and their situation, perhaps, if I'm honest, Brandon Williams doesn't get a look in if they don't have this embargo. They wanted to sign Owen Beck from Liverpool. They got a deal provisionally agreed with Liverpool and Owen. Obviously, the embargo situation has put the kibosh on that. Owen's now gone to that club in the East Midlands that I won't mention. So they're having to look elsewhere. So perhaps quirk of circumstance, Brandon's situation coupled with Hull City's situation, maybe it's a match. We'll have to wait and see. But they've got time. He's a free agent. They don't need to decide now. They can afford to give him time to see how it develops. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you move on and you look somewhere else. But a lot will depend on Ryan Giles and whether he can continue this form, because he's been brilliant. Yeah, Danny. Yeah, and loads of other comments about Ryan Giles. And he said to me on Saturday, I'm a player that breeds confidence from managers. I get confidence from managers. Sergei's given me the license to go and play my game. You can see it with Cody on the other side. They just look like they're enjoying their stuff, and that can make a massive difference. Even if you've not got pound for pound the best squad in the league, if you've got a manager and a coaching staff that can galvanise you, can give you confidence, can organise you, you've got half a chance. City aren't going to have the best squad in the league. And because of the transfer restrictions, and we don't know quite how that's going to look this time next week, when hopefully we'll have an answer on terms of the appeal and we know what we're dealing with. But if I feel like Sergei is the kind of manager that can galvanise everybody and get the best out of the players, and irrespective of what punishment, if there is going to be a long-term punishment here from the EFL, who's to say you can't get the best out of these players? So. Yeah, it's one to watch, is Brandon. I'm sure he'll get more minutes against Getafe. So in terms of other signings, where are we at? Because we've had, this afternoon was it went by in a blur. I had a meeting with the PGMO. I think it's called that now. I think they've dropped the L. So anyway, I had a meeting with the referees people, and they talked us through what they're going to do this season and how, if a goalkeeper time wastes, they're going to give a corner, which probably by the end of October we've all forgotten about. But anyway, we had that, and then we had two signings. Akim Famiwo is in from Sheffield, obviously after leaving Sheffield Wednesday. He's not been deemed fit enough to play tonight, but could be involved on Saturday. David Akintola, the Nigerian winger, is on his way. We expect him by the weekend. John Lundstrom, I apologise, I don't know who asked at the top. That is, as I understand it now, a loan agreement, not a free transfer from Trabzonspor. So John Lundstrom, the former Sheffield United midfielder, is coming in. As I understand it, that's pretty much done. Enis Destan, the young Turkish forward, attack-minded player, that is also very, very close to being done as well. So as it stands, that would be Ndala in, Famiwo in, Akintola coming in, Lundstrom coming in, and Destan coming in. So that's 5 new signings. Steven Alzate's gone, I believe, to the MLS. We're just waiting for that to be confirmed. Atalanta, as we've been saying for weeks. Rida Lalui, that's an interesting one. They're still in discussions with the Football League about how that works. I think that was about £350,000-400,000. So it's whether the EFL are prepared to sanction that one. We'll have to wait and see. I don't believe they will do that for Gustavo Puerta because of the £3.5 million they'd agree with Leverkusen. However, it's kind of one of them where it's City. I think City are trying to say to the Football League, hang on a minute, let us sign him, and we can then sell him on for more, potentially. So that's the discussions they're having right now. Whether the EFL swallow that, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, they're trying to convince the Football League that they've got buyers for Gustavo Puerta. And actually, if you're hammering us about our finances and you're telling us this, that and the other, well, let us sign him and then we can sell him. We're not going to keep him. Let us flip him on for a profit. Whether it's a pound profit or £1 million profit is a moot point. It's profit. So that's another one. But coming back to the embargo, it's going to be the hearing is going to be next week. No new information on that we've not already said, that I don't think I didn't say at Stockport on Saturday. It's my understanding that the three window fee restriction will be reduced. It's just how it looks. Is it going to be a one window? Is it going to be a non-window suspended for a period of time? Is it going to be a wage cap thing? Is it going to be a business plan situation where the EFL say, right, you can sign players, but we want to look at every single one, and we just don't know, basically, and it will be down to that panel next Monday, Tuesday, or whenever it turns out to be. we'll have to wait and see what we're dealing with. Ollie McBurney's the other one. They still want to sign Ollie McBurney. Sergei has spoken to me tonight about him. He really wants him. But again, it's whether the EFL say, because his wage packet will be, you know, as a championship team, will be, the lights have gone out, you know, it's probably time to go home. Yeah, his wages are significant, so it's whether the EFL are prepared to sanction that. But the player wants, as we understand it, the player wants Hull City. Hull City want the player. It's a case of getting that deal done. So we'll have to wait and see. But you know, everything just feels. It sounds, as I say, it sounds mad to say, given what we've gone through this summer and the absolute and utter carnage and chaos, and it has been. And let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. Just bear with me while I try and turn some lights on. It hasn't been great, has it? It's not a good look for the football club. It's not how you should operate, and the fact they're in this situation is really, really poor. And the ownership of the football club have got to learn from this. They've got to be better. To Reading and Morecambe as well. I know they're in the National League, but the EFL are keen to be seen to be doing something to try and protect football clubs, and particularly ones they feel that have got financial difficulties. And you know, whether Adjan Ilagella says they haven't, the fact of the matter is Hull City have had difficulties of paying bills on time, of paying other clubs on time, of various other issues that are bubbling away and have been in the background. There are issues there. We can't hide that, and the EFL have got concerns. And I think it would be remiss to criticise the EFL for looking at Hull City like a hawk, and then criticise the EFL for allowing situations like Wednesday and Reading to fester. So you have to kind of find that middle ground. Ultimately, City have got to prove to the Football League that there's not a cash flow problem, that there's money in the bank, that they can pay their outstanding bills, that they can sign players and they can pay for them, not just their wages, but they can actually commit to paying the transfer fees. You know, so they've got to do that. It's all right saying yes we can, but they've got to prove it, and prove it over time. And I think there needs to be an element of honesty from everybody about what we're dealing with, about the situation. Honesty is always the best policy in everything, and then you know everybody knows where we're at and what we're dealing with. And I think people would have a greater amount of understanding and respect if there was a degree of honesty about exactly what is the situation. You know, if there's a cash flow problem, talk about it. Don't hide it, and don't kind of try and sugarcoat it. Be upfront and honest, and then people will you know what you're dealing with. So look, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that appeal. As I say, I suspect it won't be a 3-window restriction. There will be some common ground. I know there was a call with the EFL this afternoon, hence why those 2 deals were signed off and done. And I would expect though the other 3 deals, is it 3 deals? I'm losing track. Akintola, Lundstrom and Destan, 3. Yeah, I would expect those 3 to get done. And then McBurney is in the mountain pot. Jack, I think Lundstrom has, yes. Now it's a loan and there's no loan fee involved. I think Lundstrom's been approved by the EFL. Destan, I think there's still a bit of work to do in terms of the makeup of that deal looks. And they're not daft, let's be honest. The EFL aren't daft. That, you know, they will be looking to see if there's how that deal looks. Let's just say that. Tom, yeah, they need more midfielders. They need to bolster their ranks. You know, they've got, yes, Matazo coming back at Christmas, but that's a long time away. That's half a season away. They can't. I'm still not convinced they can go until Christmas with Regan Slater, with Matt Crooks and Lundstrom. You know, Regan does his job. Crooks is post 30. Lundstrom's post 30. So I still feel they need, and I think they will look at that, or they are looking at that area. I know for a fact they are. I still worry about where the goals are coming from. That's not going to change until Destan, you know, his goal record is something like 9 in 51, I think it is, in the Super League in Turkey. You know, players from Turkey don't generally come to the Championship and have success. Of all the players that we've seen come from the Super League to City, only Tufan has been anything like a success, and that was really under Liam Rossini. So I the jury's going to be out on that one, I have to say. Yeah, we're hoping so. We're hoping the three that I've mentioned already. Freegan is not going to happen. Too expensive. That deal's gone by the wayside. So it's McBurney or they'll have to start looking again. Yeah, Tom, I agree with the number 6. Talked about that. Luke, in terms of McBurney, it's a difficult one to answer. How likely I think that is, because it's whether the EFL accept his. It's a free transfer, but it's whether the EFL accept the salary, and whether they think City can afford to pay it. It's a lot of money for a. I like McBurney, but he's a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 striker. He scored I think 20 goals in the Championship once when he was at Swansea, which got him his 20 million move to Sheffield United. So you're not paying. If you were paying top dollar to sign a striker that was. Prolific, you'd say, oh, fair enough. But he's not. But then it's horses for courses, isn't it? Because McBurney might come in and score 12 goals, but his the way he plays, does that create 10 goals for Joseph? Does it create 10 goals for Miller when he's back, or Balloumi? So it's horses for courses. They are looking at other strikers. There are other options if McBurney doesn't happen. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But look, they're being proactive, and that's what fans want, and they needed it. You can't afford to sack off August like they did last year. There's 4 games in August. That's 12 points. They can't afford to say, okay, well, we'll wait and see what happens at the end of the window. We'll sack off August and we'll worry about the Championship from the start of September. They nearly got relegated. They survived by a goal difference. That should serve as a warning. You can't take it for granted. You've got to be trying to win games from the very first one. Yeah, Paul, is he the answer? My gut feeling is probably not, but they put an awful lot of stock in him, and the manager really likes him. So you've got to hope that again. And it's one of those that. I had a conversation with somebody earlier on about Mason Burstow, and the person said to me, do you think Mason Burstow was the answer? And I said, no, I don't think he's the answer. But what I do think is sometimes players, particularly young players, sometimes it clicks, and under a manager it can click. And maybe Burstow, I'm not saying Burstow was going to be a 25 goal a season striker. Of course I'm not saying that. But who's to say that if he was given a chance, particularly playing up front, because let's be fair, Burstow, I think he started 8 games last season, one of which was up front. The rest of his performances, his other games, were off the flanks. Perhaps if Burstow's given a chance up front, he gets 10 goals under this manager. Perhaps Carl Joseph gets 10, 12 goals under this manager. These are young, particularly Burstow, who's only 21, and you can't write him off. So look, but I don't know who asked about the loans, but I think they'll look to fill all 5 loan spots. Well, they've obviously signed. Lundstrom's going to be a loan, and Undala from Manchester City, that's a loan. So that's 2 already. That's 2 done and dusted already. There's only 3 left. But yeah, I think they'll potentially fill those, but it will come again. That depends on how the appeal goes, because if let's for example say they're given a 1 window fee restriction, and then they're relying on the goodwill of other clubs to give them players for free. Man City have done that. They've not been paid a fee. If obviously it gets reduced or scrapped, then they can pay loan fees. Suddenly the landscape changes again, and they're shopping in a different pool of players. But there's so much up in the air. But look, if Tom, they're scouring the net far and wide. They're looking at various players. I just think you've got to be careful with respect to Turkish football. You've got to be careful about bringing too many players in from Turkey, because history tells you they're not up to it. That they're not technically. They might be technically good in their own league, but durability is a key thing. They don't play enough games, and they just have no. If you think Aliar didn't really work, Jason Lakilo didn't really work, Cynic flop. Abdush, complete flop. Tufan had his moments, was better under Liam. There's been other players that have come in and they just haven't. So it's a big risk to bring too many players in from Turkey, and you don't see too many going to other clubs in the Championship either. So the sign for me, I would, yes, Lundstrom's coming from Turkey, but obviously we know enough about him. He's about what we've seen from him in the Championship. Destan's a big risk. You know, it's not worked it out of Trabzon, sport, has it? Lincoln was another one. Let's be fair. Apart from the ball he put in for Charlie Hughes at Hillsborough, complete waste of time. Offered absolutely nothing. So you've got to be careful. I'm not writing off an entire market. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm basing my opinion on what I've seen from the players that have come from the Super League so far. They've had zero success. So yeah, I mean, the jury's out on Destan. You know, at the minute they've got Carl Joseph and Sellers Fleming up front. I'm not convinced that Destan's the answer. If they get McBurney, that the situation looks a bit better. But what they do need this season, which is what they didn't have last year, is players chipping in from elsewhere. Because very few players from out, you know, you got Louis Cole scored one, Slater scored one, Alfie Jones scored one, you know, Charlie Hughes scored one. You know, players like Charlie Hughes and Shemi Ajayi and Egan, they've got to be scoring more. You know, Drame and Giles need to be chipping in. Your midfielders, Slater, Crooks, need to be getting towards double figures. You know, if you're going to hit 50, 55 points to stay in the league, people have got to be scoring goals. If you're going to challenge further up the league, you need 4 or 5 players getting double figures, and you need somebody that's going to maybe go on and get 20. There's nobody in that squad that's getting 20 goals, as long as, you know, we've got a proverbial hole in our backside. So they've got to find a way of getting Miller 10 goals, Bellumi 10 goals. If McBurney comes, can he get 10? Can he get 15? You know, can Joseph chip in with 8 or 9? Can you know, the new lad from Man City and Darla, can he chip in with 5 or 6? They've got to be a threat from set pieces. They've got to get crosses in. The goal at Stockport, you know, Giles cross, Burstow scores. The goal that should have been at Stockport, the goal that should have been tonight, Giles cross, Kamara back post. They are starting to create, but you know, they are still short in key areas. Need to get more from Casey Palmer. You know, if you're going to be in that number 10 role, not only have you got to create, but you've got to be scoring goals. You want number 10 should be hitting double figures. A really good number 10 in this league should be hitting 8, 9, 10. So, you know, they're still a little way short, but I think in terms of McBurney, I would realistically be surprised. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I would be surprised if we get any movement on that until after, you know, the appeal is heard and they know what they're dealing with financially. I'm not ruling it out, but I would suspect it's unlikely. But this is Hull City. Things change on the flip of a coin. I've never known anything like it. So I could sit here saying I'm not expecting any movement on McBurney until the appeal's heard. I could turn my phone on and find out he signed a 3-year contract. It's just the club is a mental football club. So things are changing that quickly. So let's wait and see. But look, it's been a really hard summer for everybody. Really difficult summer. There's been a lot of stuff that hasn't been good. I think those of us that were here tonight, and if you've watched it, that you can be excited about what you've seen. And if you turn off the noise and kind of park the stuff that's going on, actually you've got a manager in place that's really knows his stuff. He's got a group of players there that are buying into him. He just needs some help. He needs some help from the transfer market. He needs numbers he needs numbers. He needs to be able to call on the bench and players to come off the bench and make an impact. There's still 40 odd days to go until the window closes, so an awful lot's going to happen. But they need to be in a good place going to Coventry. And I feel, having watched them in pre-season, having watched them tonight, I feel better about that opening game at Coventry. You know, anything can happen, obviously, but I think we should be enthused by what we've seen tonight. I think Tom Jakurovic, no, I don't believe he was. No, I'm not sure he was. In answer to your question, I can't guarantee that. But I don't believe he was fully abreast of the situation. I think it came the EFL embargo stuff. I think that came as a surprise to some at the football club, not others. Admittedly, there were some at the football club that were surprised it hadn't come before. But I think it surprised one or two. Right, I need to get going. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions and your comments. We do appreciate them, and I do read them all. It's going to be a busy week, I think, leading into that Getafe game. yeah, potentially 3 more signings. It could be 5. It could be none if the EFL say no. So we'll have to wait and see. But this is a fast-moving situation that's developing all the time. They're in for a lot of players. They've got feelers out across Europe. There's going to be links coming from all over the place. Some of them are going to be genuine. Some of them are not. I mean, I saw. I can't remember what the player was. Was it Callum Britton? They were linked with somebody was reporting they were after Callum Britton £4 million. I'm thinking, like, what? Do you not know that they can't buy anybody? And where are they getting £4 million from? Where are they? I mean, that is just anyway. So that's an example of you know, some of the folly that's out there. A lot of it agent talk, in fairness, but they won't be signing Callum Britton for £4 million. They obviously can't sign Callum Britton for £4 million. And even if their fee restrictions were lifted, I still don't think they'd be signing anybody for £4 million. But anyway, that I'd probably put the mockers on that, because if it gets restricted, probably deadline day, they sign somebody for £5 million. It's Hull City. It's mental. I can't keep up with it. Anyway, so that's it. Yeah, exciting, really enjoyable game to watch tonight. 5 straight wins. Lots to be impressed with from the manager and his setup and his team. Shout out to the young boys who did really well again. Tinsdale, I thought, was good. Vaughan when he came on. Cathal McCarthy tearing back to make a really good challenge, and then tearing forward in the 90th minute to win a free kick and basically kill the game. So there's a lot to be optimistic about. There's a lot of stuff that's, you know, needs sorting out and is concerning, but there's a lot to be optimistic about. And they've got a manager in place, I think, who can do good things this season if he's given if he's given the time and the space to get on with his job. Right, that's it from here at the MKM Stadium. We will be back post-match on Saturday. All being well, we'll have a podcast for you either Thursday or Friday. Now, Catherine's back from her month-long hiatus in Switzerland following the England team, and congratulations to the England team, because they were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I've got a shout out before I go as well to Burnsy. He was here tonight, Burnsy. Great to see him. He's been really, really poorly, bless him, over the summer. So great to see him back at the MKM Stadium. I don't think he'll be on the pod for a little while. His voice still isn't quite where he'd like it to be. But yeah, fantastic to see Burnsy, to see him back. And that's it. We will be back on Saturday at the MKM Stadium. Thanks for watching, everybody.